Hello, CIS833C. I'm recording a separate video just to illustrate how you can set up a streaming system using your Raspberry Pi 4. That's where we're having some challenges in the Zoom session for me to demo it with using VNC. So in this exercise, we are going to use Raspberry Pi 4. You need to have the Pi 4, the micro SD with Raspbian OS Buster, and internet connection. We simply are going to use IceCast to be able to provide the services for our streaming system. And so here in the document, it talks about how you would see other type of protocols like AirPlay, Rune, Squeezebox, and commercial installations like AES51 or ABB for internet streaming. So with this type of device, what you can do is you can create an audio streaming service from your Raspberry Pi. However, it would be just used locally on your network. But if you want to put it on the web, you have to find a domain. You can find some free domain out there, or you can subscribe to a domain like GoDaddy and be able to have a website. With that, you would have a public IP. You can link it to your Raspberry Pi. I highly recommend looking at IceCast documentation. It would provide resources for you. Go to the docs, and so you can read the documentation on how to use IceCast. It walks you through on how to be able to set up some of the additional feature for your streaming service. Along with that, you can check out some of the applications and the packages that can be incorporated with your streaming. So in this particular exercise, we are going to start with using your Raspberry Pi. So in the Raspberry Pi, we would then open up our terminal. We would issue an update. So we would say sudo app update, and this is the first step. And this might take about a couple minutes or so. It's going to go through and it's going to update your system. And then next, we are going to do a sudo app upgrade. And so after we finish updating and upgrading, that would complete the first step in the exercise. Then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to download the DarkIce DB package and install it. And with that, we have to pull in some of the library. So I can simply copy this command, and I would go to my Raspberry Pi terminal and I would paste it. And so once it's downloaded, we just use the wget command there to pull it from the repository on GitHub. Then we are going to do an mv command to move it. So again, we are going to copy that command and we are going to paste it into the Raspberry Pi terminal. If you're not receiving any error, that means that it's going through okay. Then we are going to install the library. So we are going to again copy the command that's provided in the instructions. We are going to go ahead and go to our terminal again, and we are going to paste this. Okay. So we would then have our appropriate packages that we need, and then we are going to go ahead and download the package. So once it's completing that step, we have accomplished number 2 in our exercise. And then we are going to install now the IceCast2. And IceCast2 is needed for the streaming service. It's going to be the service that we want to install here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this command again, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste this. So at this point, it's going to install and it's going to prompt you the user interface for this. And we do want to have the configuration for our IceCast. Okay, so you're going to use your arrow key to go to yes and then press enter. And here you can leave the local host the same name. So in the next step, it shows you that you want to configure the IceCast2 for step 4. We are going to go ahead and click OK for the local host as the host name. And then that will be in step 5. And then what we want to do is we are going to create 3 passwords. And by default, it would have Hackney. So going back to my Raspberry Pi here, I'm going to use my arrow key to go down to OK, and I'm going to press enter. And then for the password, we can change this up, or if you want, you can keep it the same, but that would not be safe. If you keep it the same, it would be Hackney, and then again the same, and again. Okay, so once we already have the password stored there, it's going to go through and it's going to process our configuration. Then we are going to move on to the next step. So with that, we have accomplished step 6. Next, we are going to do a configuration file for DarkIce. And with this, we are going to use Nano, which is a text editor that we can call up during our terminal session. So we're going to go ahead and copy this command. We're going to go to our Raspberry Pi terminal, and we are going to paste this command in. So in using Nano, you can go ahead and create a configuration file. And so right now, I have a blank file, and I'm in Nano. Nano is a text editor again. So what I can do is I had also on your assignments, I have uploaded one of the files that you can use. Okay, so for week 2 assignments, you can find the configuration file here for DarkIce, and I also have that written on my text editor here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the content of that file. So if you see that file on Canvas, you can download it, open up your text editor like Sublime. Do not use Notepad because if you want, you can use Notepad to open it up and see and copy it, but we're going to go ahead and copy. And then we are going to go back to our Raspberry Pi file that we had created that was blank, and we are going to go ahead and paste that in here. Now what we're going to do is you can use the local host here, or you can edit that. Okay, and I had previously kept the same password, so it's going to be Hackney, but if you need to change, you can move your cursor up and down and then backspace out. So if you wanted to change this to an IP, you can modify this to your IP address. And I will talk about how you can find your IP address. So once we have everything that we need, right, our server name, which is localhost, or you can use an IP address that will be 192.168.x.x. And then also the password that you previously created, make sure that it matches, otherwise it doesn't work. Then you are going to press Control X together, and you should see that it's going to prompt you to ask you if you wanted to save the file. You're going to press Y to say yes. And then the file name that it's going to write, you're going to press Enter key. And so with that, what we have done is we created the file. And if you wanted to check out the content of that again, you can rerun that command and it's going to open up that file for you again. Okay, and if you wanted to close it, you would do Control X. So here I had created a configuration file for my DarkIce, which is a service that I'm going to use for my streaming server. So now if you're using the configuration file in the exercise, I'm going to go ahead and modify this down the line. Just keep in mind that it has um, more configuration in the content. So use the one that I uploaded on the Canvas page. Then we are going to create a second file called darkice.sh. So again, for step 9, we are going to call up nano. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this command, go to my terminal, and then paste it. Now this is a different file as it is a script, a shell script file. Earlier, you had written a configuration file. That's what the system needs to be able to put in the settings for that particular service. Next, we are going to do a script file. This file is going to be used to access that configuration file. So we are going to go ahead and do sudo nano darkice sh. It's going to open up another blank file called darkice.sh, as you can see here. So in that, what we're going to do is go back to our instructions, and we are going to copy this line and paste it into that file, because that file is going to be used to copy the configuration file from the location where we created, which is in home and Pi folder, and it's going to put it into the USR bin darkice directory, so that way it would be able to find the configuration as it runs that service. So we are going to go ahead and copy this for step 10. And then we are going to put it in here. Sorry. We're going to go ahead and paste this. Let me try that again. And once you have that line pasted into the darkice.sh, which is a script file, you're going to press Control X to exit, and it's going to ask you to save. So you are going to press Y for yes, and the file name, make sure that it's darkice.sh. We're going to press enter. So now we also created a second file called darkice.sh, which is used to access the darkice.cfg, which is a configuration file, or copy it to the location where the system can access it for the service. So after that, we need to make sure that we modify the permission for the shell's script file that we just created in the previous step. So we're going to go ahead and copy this. And in Linux, what you're doing is when you're using chmod command, all that is going to change the permission, and here's the location of the file. So we are changing the permission of the darkice.sh so that way it will become an executable. It can be executed as we would require that with our service. So going back to our Raspberry Pi terminal, we're going to go ahead and paste in the command to change its permission for the darkice.sh. As I did that successfully, I would then be able to execute the darkice.sh file there. Then next, we are going to go ahead and start the service. So once we already had it installed, we wrote the files in order for it to be used. Next, we're going to go ahead and get that started. So we are going to go ahead and click copy here. And then we are going to go ahead and click paste here. So we now are going to initialize the service. And this might take a little bit, and it's going to go ahead and, so we're going to start the IceCast2. Once you start the IceCast2, then we want to be able to use a file to have it run at the boot. So in step 13, we are going to use cron tab, and cron tab is used to schedule a certain task in Linux. So here we're going to go ahead and execute cron tab -e, and it's going to prompt you this. So we are going to first use nano. So we're going to select option 1. So here is the file for us to be able to schedule. And if you want to find out more, you can go to help options. So use your arrow key on your keyboard. You're going to scroll down to the last line on that file. And you're going to go back to the instruction and you're going to copy in the command from step 14. And you are going to paste it into the cron tab file. Okay. So once I have that pasted at the end, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control X to exit, Y to save, and then enter. So what I did just now is to make sure that my Raspberry Pi would wait 30 seconds after it reboots, and then it's going to open up the darkice.sh file that I created, and then it's going to use that file to copy the configuration file for the service to use. So I had completed 13 and 14 when I had used this in my schedule tasks process. Then I would move on to step 15, which I would then reboot the system. And with this, if you're on VNC, it's going to disconnect, and then you can close that and then reopen VNC again. So as my system reboot, I can wait for it to go for about a minute or so before I would then try to open my server. So for the next step, after it reboots, what you're going to do is you are going to go into your Raspberry Pi, open up Chromium, which is your web browser in the Raspberry Pi, and you are going to put in your IP address. But let's learn how to find out our IP address. So I'm going to go ahead and reconnect to my Raspberry Pi using VNC. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up my terminal. And here you can use 2 commands. First command you can use is IP address. And so for the IP address, what you want to look for is going to be the iNet address that's in the middle. And it would start with 192.168, and in my case, it's .13. But if you wanted to use another command, you can also use ifconfig. And ifconfig is also going to give you your iNet address. And we wanted to make sure that it's part of the WLAN 0 and use this IP address. And on yours, it will be different than mine, right, as you can see there. Okay, so once we have our IP address, then we can go open up our browser. So click on the globe on the top left, and you are going to type in your IP address. And you're going to hit :8000. So if everything successfully goes, you would then be able to see IceCast2 status. If you click on administration, you have to put in the password that you originally created in order to access it. You can click on your server status, and so on. If I click on the admin portion of the page, it's going to prompt me this, and I would go ahead and need to log in using my admin user account and the password that I created. And then I would be able to see the information that it uses. So the mount point list, you can also see if there's active mount point. So if there's not an active mount point here, what you want to do is you want to go back and edit your configuration file so that way you can have the active mount point. And then for the public home, it would just be the same page. So at this point, in order to test to see if we can put MP3 on here, we would then need to be able to have a sound card that's going to be able to capture that. So to complete this exercise, I want to show you the basic on how to set up your IceCast2. And so if you take a picture of your successful output with your IP address, you should be able to, you can do a screenshot, use your smartphone to take a picture. You can submit it that way. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. If you have any concern or anything like that, please send me a message or ask me in the live session this week. Thank you very much for watching the video.